So let's talk about a little more holistic view of e-commerce, because we've been hearing a lot about these pandemic trends kind of reversing. If you think back to early in the pandemic, there's this idea that it was going to accelerate e-commerce. We saw companies like Amazon and your company really ramp up hiring, ramp up capacity to fulfill all these e-commerce orders. And this also extended to companies like Peloton, which this idea we're going to work out from home forever and live this hybrid lifestyle. Now we're seeing a pull back on that. In fact, we're hearing talk about people trading down and spending less online and going back out into the real world. So can you talk a little bit about what you've seen recently from early on in the pandemic?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think that the pandemic obviously changed a lot of things. And in many ways, what it did was it pulled forward future e-commerce growth and digital retail growth, 5 years worth of growth in like a year or so. But I wouldn't say that it's slowed down. In fact, it's now back to the rate of growth that we saw like in 2018, 2019. But the difference is on a much higher base. So you think about all the people that historically weren't participating in e-commerce, that through the pandemic had no choice but to start buying online. Well, they're still doing it now. Now, although the rate of growth may not be exactly the same like it was during the pandemic, it is now, it's now normalized, but on a much higher base. But I think there's no question about it. The retailers, the brands, the companies that are going to be most successful in the future, they're the ones that are embracing this idea of sell wherever your customers are, whether that's online or offline, or it's on social media or anywhere in between.
So that's great, but let's talk about a different part. So recently, we're coming out of a pandemic and potentially into a recession, and we're hearing lots of stories from big box retailers saying, especially the Walmarts and Amazons of the world. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy was on recently with CNBC saying they're seeing customers trade down, spend less, looking for deals. Now that's kind of easy for a big box retailer to do. The Shopify network is full of small businesses. How does a small business compete with that? What are you seeing Shopify partners do in order to help these customers who are looking for value these days?
We've millions of stores on Shopify, and it's true, as you mentioned, a lot of our businesses on Shopify are small businesses. We also have a lot of large companies as well, or companies that started small that got really big, the Gymsharks of the world, the Allbirds of the world, the Alo Yogas, the Vioris. What we're seeing from a consumer perspective is a lot more intentionality around how they're buying and what they're buying. So rather than buying 5 different pairs of sweatpants, they're buying the one pair of sweatpants that they think is the highest quality. And so this idea of the shift to intentionality is certainly happening. But from a small business perspective, one thing that I think has been coming for a while that is now very much steady state is this business model of direct to consumer, that consumers want to buy directly from the brands that they love. Today I'm sitting here wearing my favorite stuff. I'm wearing Kith sneakers, I'm wearing James Purse pants, and wearing a Blue Salt hoodie. I buy directly from these brands, and as opposed to having an intermediary. What that means for me as a consumer is not only am I able to get exactly what I want, but I'm paying less than I would if I was buying through an intermediary or a wholesale type business model. And I think one of the things that small businesses really can take advantage of is this idea of connect to consumer, that they can meet the consumer wherever they are, whether that's on TikTok and they're selling directly inside of social media or something like Instagram, for example, or even if you're a musician and you have merch, now you can actually set up a beautiful Shopify store right in your Spotify account, so when you're listening to music, you can also purchase. But all of these different venues, all of these different channels didn't exist 5 years ago, and those are opportunities for small business to sell directly to those consumers.
I think you're looking at my list of questions, because I was just going to jump into the social media thing, because when you talk DTC and direct to consumer, it's all Instagram, it's all TikTok. I mean, you can't scroll, 2 scrolls through Instagram without being thrown an ad or something encouraging you to buy one of the companies that you just mentioned, in fact. So what are you seeing as far as what works there on DTC companies, on social media? What kind of strategies work? What kind of, if you're going to hire an influencer to kind of promote your brand, what have you noticed the most traction with, especially for smaller companies that maybe don't have that big marketing budget?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a couple tactics that I think I've seen work really well across the millions of stores on Shopify. Something that's kind of neat is if you aggregate all the stores on Shopify, we're about 10% of all US e-commerce. That's a very, very big number. So we get this incredible perspective on what's working. One of the things, though, that I think is timeless, that I think small businesses have to be thinking about, is authenticity. Are you selling? Are you marketing? Are you interacting with your end consumer in a way that feels really authentic? So that means that if you're going to do a partnership or some sort of business arrangement with an influencer, you want to make make sure that influencer is really authentic in terms of their community. Now, a lot of people are talking about this idea of the creator economy, where these content creators, for the first time ever, are changing their business from just creating content to also creating products. And if you kind of think back to the old way, like the Field of Dreams model, which is if you build it, they will come. That's not happening anymore. That's not really the case. You can have the greatest product, but if you don't have an audience to buy that product, you may not be as successful. The reason you are seeing so many of these incredible creators have so much success, whether it's Emma Chamberlain with Chamberlain Coffee, she's on the cover of Rolling Stone most recently, or Feastables with Mr. Beast, these are all amazing Shopify stores. The reason that they're having so much success is not only do they have a built-in audience, but they're building really great products. These aren't promotional products. These are high-quality coffee, high-quality chocolate, and you're seeing that across a bunch of different categories. So if you're a small business, and you can't afford to hire, Mr. Beast, the biggest content creator, maybe you can find micro-influencers, people that have a small community, maybe of a couple thousand followers, but are very much, get really deep with that community. It's high engagement. You don't have to only look at Instagram. You can also look at Reddit, subreddits, for example. You can also look at Pinterest boards and who's being followed a lot on Pinterest. You have an opportunity to look across the entire market to find micro-influencers, which again, may be less expensive to hire to promote your brand, but have a very authentic and a very deep and compelling relationship with their audience. And I think that's actually the opportunity. In some ways, this current climate of commerce and retail is probably the most interesting time ever for small businesses, because it's not just about capital. It's not just about how much money you have. If you are creative and you're authentic, you can actually build a massive company. And that's the reason why I mentioned some of these homegrown success stories that have become, massive category leaders on Shopify.
And you talk about authenticity, and I guess that's easier to know, the Mr. Beasts of the world, they're the real deal, but these smaller, more niche ones you were kind of referring to, how does one vet someone like that to make sure they really are the real deal, they know what they're talking about, the audience is the customer you're actually going after? How do you know that?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the work comes in. And again, it doesn't cost money, but it does take time. If you're selling kitchenware, you're selling pots and pans, or you're selling silverware, for example, and you want to find a great influencer in that space, rather than look for who has the most amount of subscribers on YouTube, look for smaller subscriber channels, smaller channels that have incredible engagement. So maybe they only have 5,000 subscribers on YouTube, but every day they're talking about a brand new recipe, or they're highlighting a new type of kitchen equipment. Those are the people to go after. And again, it takes more time. It's obviously a lot harder to find them, but they're less expensive, and you actually may see a higher return on investment because no one else is trying to engage with them. No one else is trying to create partnerships with them. So if I was starting a company today, I have a little side hustle, a tea business, for example. It's called Firebelly. I started during the pandemic with a friend of mine. I want to use, all of Shopify's great features, but I also want to experience what it's like to build a brand new modern brand. And one of the things we do is we don't go after the big tea influencers or the big coffee influencers. We find people who have a small audience but high engagement. We read the comments. Are they responding to comments? We look at whether or not they're responding to tweets. Are they posting every single day on Instagram? So again, these are not the biggest influencers on the planet, but they're people with very high engagement. And actually, those are the things that have been working best for us.
Now, a lot of this is happening on TikTok. I know you mentioned Instagram, and that's probably where most of the money is made. Correct me if I'm wrong, but TikTok is a huge part and growing. We also know it might be banned pretty soon. So let's just play this out. If TikTok goes away, where should people be directing their attention and their dollars to?
Yeah, I mean, just on the TikTok point for a second, if you look at the hashtag TikTok made me buy it, which is a very popular hashtag, I think it has 50 billion impressions right now. So a lot of people are using TikTok right now to find customers. You see a lot of consumers using it to find different brands. You're sort of seeing this wonderful matchmaking happening on TikTok. But if TikTok no longer exists, or Instagram no longer exists in the way that MySpace today no longer exists, I think the brands that are going to be the most impressive, they're going to build the biggest companies over the longest period of time, they're going to be channel agnostic. Here's a great way to think about it. If you're building a brand today, you may have customers that really want to buy in-store. You may have customers that want to buy in your online store. You may have customers that want to buy at a pop-up shop or a farmer's market. I think you as a brand, specifically if you're a small business, you have to be channel agnostic. You need to sell across the surface area that your customers may want to spend their time on. And reducing friction in those surface areas really matters. So if TikTok is where a lot of your consumers are today, that's where you should start selling. But if there's a new type of social media platform or a new type of model around where to sell, well, you have to be ready for those things as well. And rather than build your business entirely around one particular channel, build it across an omni-channel selection of different places for purchase. Those are the brands that are going to build the biggest companies over the long run. And that's the reason why more and more, if you think about Shopify, we're less of an e-commerce provider and more of a retail operating system, where if you want to sell across every single one of those surface areas, you can do so directly from Shopify. That, I think, is the future of retail, not online versus offline.
So don't put all your eggs in the TikTok basket is basically what I'm hearing.
Or any basket for that matter. That's right, yeah.
But what about the different types of content? So, what works on TikTok might not necessarily work on YouTube Shorts or Instagram. How do you tell your clients to kind of adapt to those different audiences?
That's the best part. You can actually just ask them. This idea of this like real-time feedback loop, that was impossible for companies that were born 10, 20, 50, 100 years ago. Now you can actually put a piece of content up on TikTok or Instagram or Spotify or Pinterest, and you can ask a very simple question. Does this content resonate with you? Do you like what I'm posting here? And almost in real time, hyper real time, in that very moment, you will see people respond and say, I really love this. Can you do more of this? Or I don't like this. This doesn't work for me. Now, every single one of those platforms is going to have a different type of audience, meaning they're going to have different buying preferences and consumption preferences. But I think actually asking your customers what they want to see more of or what they want to see less of is the easiest, simplest, least expensive way to actually get that feedback. And over time, as you tweak that content for each different platform, you end up with something that people really, really want. That was impossible, again, even 5 years ago. Everyone should be doing that right now.
And are they being too reliant on social platforms? I mean, are there other avenues or maybe even some budding platforms out there that we should be thinking of? Or is it really just Instagram, TikTok, and everything else is kind of underneath it?
Well, those are the ones, Steve, that are getting the most attention. But the truth is there's so many different places to sell. I think, the same could be said about the 1980s and early 1990s, retailers and brands being overly reliant on the traditional shopping mall. As the shopping mall became less popular, obviously that channel, didn't go away, but became less relevant. So you had to now open your own beautiful brick and mortar store, or you had to show up at Coachella, or you have to show up at South by Southwest and have a pop-up there. Again, I think the same metaphor, the same lesson applies, which is that you have to try to be everywhere that your consumers are. And how do you know that? You can ask your consumers. If they buy something from you, you can simply say, where do you spend your time? Are you more of a TikTok user or an Instagram user? Do you spend any time on YouTube? Do you like YouTube Shorts? If you realize they like YouTube Shorts, which is their sort of their story version for YouTube, you may decide, I'm going to stop producing long form content on YouTube and start doing these shorts as well. They will tell you those things as well. But again, I think you have a big audience in some of these big platforms like an Instagram and a TikTok, but you may actually find some alpha, some arbitrage opportunity on a particular subreddit group or something, a Discord channel, for example, that all of your competitors are completely ignoring or neglecting. That may be where you find your core audience that changes the entirety of your business.
Harley, that's some great insights for people looking to sell more online. Probably through Shopify, I think you prefer, or directly through these social media networks. Harley, thank you for joining us.
We just like the idea of more people trying their hand in entrepreneurship. We think entrepreneurship is one of the greatest ways for humans to self-actualize, to make a living, to find independence, and we want to create more entrepreneurs in the world. And I think right now there's a bit of an entrepreneurship renaissance happening.